Larry Johnson, former CIA analyst and current geopolitical commentator, analyst, and journalist. Larry, good to see you again.
Senor, how are you?
I am great. Everyone, make sure you hit the like button. That helps boost the show in YouTube's algorithm. So yes, let's get into this. A ship was reportedly struck after that warning, Larry, from the IRGC that the Iranian Navy must be sought permission from in order for any vessel to go through. We have not heard any response yet, specifically from Washington about this particular incident, but this is a big blow to the reports that the United States is getting everything it wants from Iran. What is going on here, and your thoughts about these latest developments?
Well, anybody wants to know what's going on, they need to only go to the Strait of Hormuz, go to marinetraffic.com, and it brings up a real-time map of what ships are where, what ships are going through, and right now there's nothing going through. Or right over, let's see, right over on the coast, just off the western coast of Kemch Island, you've got a small boat that's going to Bandar Abbas, and three little ships that are headed towards Bandar Abbas. The only ship, it's called the Halti. It's headed into the strait, and that's about it. The ones that have recently come out are all headed to China or Pakistan or Singapore. So, Trump celebrating, oh boy, we got 19 million barrels of oil out on Tuesday, and there are all these ships that are flowing. Let's say he was confabulating. He was saying some things that just are not accurate. They are inaccurate. And Iran remains in full control of the Strait of Hormuz. And the reality is there's nothing the United States can do militarily to open that strait at a cost that the United States is willing to pay. And let me explain what I mean by that. Could the United States devote enough, concentrate military assets, both the naval ships and personnel and air assets, and ultimately silence Iran's ability to retaliate? Yes. But it would come at a tremendous cost, significant loss of life, significant loss of naval assets. And it would take more than 6 months, in my view, to try to, and that's saying even if they decided to do that, to mobilize the force necessary to conduct such an operation would take at least a year. So that's what I'm saying. They just can't flip a switch and all of a sudden, we'll open it up. So Iran holds the trump cards here. Then you've got these other problems that face the strait. When you pull up that map and you zoom out, oh my God, the Persian Gulf is filled with ships that have been sitting there for 4 months, just accumulating barnacles on the hull, and the salinity of the water is something that's going to have to be. The ships will all need sort of a cleanup maintenance routine before they can actually be returned to service. So it's not like these ships are sitting out there just ready to run over the shore, and then they get a complete reload they get filled with oil, and then they sell off and things are back to normal. No, that's not happening. And that's where Trump is being misleading. The other thing that Trump didn't really unveil is the fact that why did he sign the MOU? Why did he do such a quick reversal before they were dragging their feet? It is because he was finally briefed on how dire the situation is with respect to heavy crude oil, which is used, refined to produce aviation fuel and diesel fuel. And I just learned this recently. I didn't know this before, but a refinery, if it's got that heavy crude, it's got to make a choice. Are we going to produce diesel, or are we going to produce aviation fuel? It's not like we can do both at the same time. They can only do one at the same time. And I'm not sure what the time lag is between once you complete a refining process to produce diesel, that how easy is it to transition and move to producing the jet fuel? I don't have the answer to that. I'm sure somebody out there does. But there is a shortage potentially within 2 weeks that we run out of that heavy crude. And so that there's going to be a real crisis of diesel/aviation fuel that there's no easy solution to. That right now, there's not enough crude flowing out of the Persian Gulf. It's been 20% cut off for 4 months. And to compensate for that, the U.S. has been drawing down a strategic petroleum reserve. Well, it's basically, was it Jackson Brown or the Eagles running on empty? That's what we're doing, running on empty. And once it hits that level, right now we're probably at about 100. We have let's call it 320 million barrels of oil left in the strategic petroleum reserves in the United States. Of that, though, you have to keep 140 million in place to stabilize the salt caverns in which that oil is stored. Because if you take too much out, because the way they remove the oil, they have to pump water in. Water mixes with salt pretty well and creates salt water. Oil doesn't mix with salt. So that's why they use the stores oil there. But if you have to pump in enough water, all of a sudden that water can soften, destabilize those caverns, and they collapse. So basically, you got 180 million barrels of oil, but that's not all heavy crude. It's light crude. And I think that actually the ratio is about 2/3 of it is the light crude, which makes gasoline. But the other is, let's say you got basically 40 million barrels of heavy crude. Well, when you look at the consumption on a daily basis, basis in the United States, the overall consumption is 20 million barrels of oil a day. So let's just say that the diesel aviation fuel of that, what is it? 25%, 50%? That's another good question to ask the AI search engines. But so this is coming to a head. And so the Strait of Hormuz remains this critical node that is that it represents a threat to the economy, not just the United States, of the world.
Let's get into, Larry, what Iran in particular about. Oops, sorry, that's the wrong source here. I have to add it to the stage. Here we go. Let's get into this. The Dropsite News reported this, that in this warning, they said that a new route announced that there were authorities that announced a new route for shipping traffic through the Strait of Hormuz without informing or coordinating with the Islamic Republic of Iran, and that it was unacceptable and completely dangerous, saying that, and there was an Oman and UN affiliated international maritime organization that announced a temporary shipping corridor to allow hundreds of ships and roughly 11,000 stranded seafarers to transit the Strait of Hormuz. And this comes, Larry, as the Trump administration is saying that the Strait of Hormuz is completely open and that ships are now moving through in record numbers. But Iran is saying that that's
complete bullshit. Just go right now, type in maritimetraffic.com. Take a look.
Right. Well, your thoughts about the danger that Iran is speaking of. What does Iran mean by the danger of this shipping route? And I'll find the information as you talk.
Well, I mean, Iran's taking control. They're going to maintain control and of who can sell where and when. So if the ships turn off the transponders, they forget that they've still got radar, and the radar can still show up this unknown target. And Iran's going to send out its patrol boats to figure out who are you, what are you doing, and those patrol boats are armed in a way that they can fire a missile into the ship. So, it's not like these ships are flowing in and out. That's what's so crazy about this. It's a scant number.
Yeah.
But you got to ask yourself, why are they lying about this?
Right. Well, here's the live map. Is this the map you were speaking about?
Yeah.
Maybe not. Yeah.
Okay. Yeah. So drill down. You drill down to the Persian Gulf. Keep going. Keep going.
Here we go. Right.
Yeah. Keep going. Keep going. Go back to your left and up.
Here we go.
Yeah, go back straight up. Okay, there it is. Keep going. Boom. Now drill in again. Keep going up. No, you're coming back. Go drill in. Yeah.
Here we go.
There.
This is it. Right?
Okay. There's the Strait of Hormuz.
Wow. Okay. There's a lot of ships in there.
A lot of ships are in there, but they're not going through the strait, correct?
Nope. No. They're
yeah, and that's real time.
Yep.
So that's what I'm saying. They're lying. And
yeah.
so you got to step back and say, why the end? Look how many are in there. Now, the other thing we keep hearing that the Gulf is mined, yet we've seen no evidence of ships being hit with a mine and blowing up.
Mm.
I'm wondering if that was just a psyop as opposed to being an actual intelligence, an actual reality. I don't know.
Well, why would Iran need to mine if they have the capability of their navy has the capability of striking ships anyway? I mean, that's a lot of investment. That's an investment, and it's also hard to demine as well.
I agree, because the last time they mined the Persian Gulf to stop the movement of ships was back in 1987 during the war with Iraq. And at that time, Iran had limited naval capability. They did have ships that could go out and drop mines, and those mines were trying to create a threat that would keep other ships from transiting, trying to cut off funds from Iraq. Because remember, the United States is helping fund that war against Iran. And so Iran did the quite reasonable, rational thing in trying to retaliate. But they, candidly, they don't need mines now. They've got underwater mini submarines. They've got underwater drones. They got surface drones. They got surface vessels that they can carry, boat to ship missiles, they'll call it. They've got aviation drones. They've got short range cruise missiles, coastal defense cruise missiles. They got short range ballistic missiles. They got a lot of options that they can threaten and hit a particular ship. They don't have to create a threat that ties everybody down, unless, that may have been their purpose. As long as the insurance companies, Lloyd's of London in particular, perceive the possibility of the threat from mines, they're not going to let those ships move. So yeah, there are a number of built-in obstacles preventing those ships from moving. Not to mention is there any oil at the terminals, any liquid natural gas at the terminals to load up with? In Qatar, the LNG is very damaged, and maybe a year or more from being repaired. Yeah. So, that's another issue. What we can say definitively is, since the straits opened under this MOU more than a week ago, no ships of any consequence have passed through the straits carrying oil to the United States or to Europe. It's going to Asia.
Yeah. Yeah, that's Iran has made that very clear. And yet, Larry, the United States, the Trump administration, continues to put out this idea that everything that Iran is going to get out of this deal is going to come right back to the United States, whether it's oil shipments because of the relieved sanctions, the temporary relief of oil sanctions, and of course, the unfrozen assets, the $12 billion that reportedly has gotten back to Iran from its stolen assets in places like Qatar. But Ghalibaf says straight away, I mean, how are negotiations actually going? With comments like these, it's obvious that the Iranian side is not trusting the United States, that there's very little love on that side. And from the U.S. side, not a lot of comments. Trump is putting out a very enthusiastic framing, but I think the general public in the United States is very much not trusting the United States' behavior in this deal, despite wanting it to work out. The vast majority of people want it to work out. The vast majority of people as not being sustainable in the long term. What are your thoughts on this?
Well, let's turn the question around. The United States doesn't like the deal. What can it do about it?
That's a good question.
I mean, what can it do? Is it going to invade Iran? No, it doesn't have the ability to do that. Right now, and it appears, I know that the orders have been drawn up to start the redeployment of U.S. air assets and military personnel that were sent forward. So it drawn up for at least 2 days, 3 days. It has not been signed off on yet. Once once it's signed off on, then as they start to flow back, the ability of the United States to carry out attacks on Iran will diminish, not increase. It will be less capable of using any kind of military force against Iran. To use effective force against Iran would require maintaining the existing assets we have and probably boosting them. The problem is this. You remember we talked about there's a supply, they call it sweet crude, sour crude. So it's the sour crude out of which, out of which comes the aviation fuel, the diesel. So at the start of the war, you had this level of diesel being produced, this level of aviation fuel being produced, and they were essentially meeting the demand. The war starts. What happens? The demand for aviation fuel goes up. Why? Because the civil airliners are still flying, but they need that fuel. You now got all these jets conducting these combat operations that they weren't previously. Well, and now you're doing that at a time where the supply of oil that you had was here at the start or before the 28th, and now with the shutdown of the Strait, it's dropped 20%. So you got less supply, more demand, price shoots up, but then just because the price shoots up doesn't mean that everybody's demand can be satisfied. Now, that was, so if the United States decides to return to war now, we're going, just as we've depleted some of our weapon systems, we've actually depleted our fuel source. And it goes back to, running on empty. So this is, the United States has got options what it can do to Iran from a military standpoint. So it's going to have to rely upon the diplomatic side.
Now, Larry, I have a question about something that's been bothering me about, I feel like there's a propaganda war on many fronts. There's, of course, those who are on the Trump side, MAGA, whatever, if we want to call it that, people who are trying to push Iran fully defeated. They are giving everything we want. Then there are others who oppose the U.S. war and Israeli war on Iran, but are now very suspicious of Iran's engagement in these negotiations and have brought up a point about Gaza and the first point in the MOU talking about an end to war on all fronts, but not explicitly talking about Gaza. Now, recently, Foreign Minister Iran Arachi said to Hamas that Iran is going to raise Gaza in these talks. And yet we are hearing so many talk about, I see this all over social media, who even, maybe have traveled to Iran, have really championed peace, being very critical about this process. What do you make of this engagement, this kind of debate around the veracity and the legitimacy of Iran's participation in the MOU and whether they're making the right decision? I don't believe it's the right approach to take, but I'm curious your thoughts about it.
Well, is Iran getting bombed on a daily basis? No.
Nope.
That right there. Has Iran been required to give up its sovereignty, to surrender its control over the Strait of Hormuz? No. Has Iran demand that the territory of Lebanon be respected, both the territorial integrity and its sovereignty be respected? Has that been rejected? No.
Yeah. No, it has not been.
So, okay, again, explain to me what the problem is, why this is bad for Iran. I don't get it.
I have no idea. I mean, it seems to me that there's such a deep nihilism, all right? And I get the point of wanting to see a country as resilient and as steadfast as Iran has been, wanting to keep pushing the envelope. However, this I don't believe is the right approach, because this is this is not going to be something that is resolved. First of all, there are very few wars that are resolved in a matter of less than a year. But there's I don't think this is something that's going to stay in the status quo forever and ever and ever. The United States, Israel, they are who they are, and Iran is who it is. And so I'm like, maybe a little patience. Maybe Iran is doing what it feels like it needs to do and what it might be beneficial toward it. It seems like they're gaining a lot of benefits for themselves, and that is a big gain for everybody.
Yeah,
Palestinians, Lebanon, etc. But back to you.
Well, I again, how long Israel first invaded Lebanon back in 1982, and so that's 44 years ago. Now, for the first time in 44 years, we have the United States signing a document that acknowledges the right of Iran to ensure the territorial integrity and sovereignty of Lebanon. Unheard of before. Absolutely unheard of before. So yeah, that's why these critics, I would just turn to them and say, well, what is it exactly that you want? What's the problem here? You want to continue having Iranians killed and American attacks, or now you've got the United States, because of its economic peril, because of what's coming down the pike, that it has to negotiate. Doesn't like it. The terms that Donald Trump, he refuses to acknowledge what the real terms of the agreement are. And he keeps pretending that it's something else. But the reality is what the reality is. And, the Iranians are letting Trump just step back and play his games, make his ridiculous claims that he's got this and that concession from Iran, which he doesn't. And then, in the course of all this, Iran's making progress. It's not just Iran. Look at what is happening with the new security architecture being erected in the Persian Gulf, with Pakistan playing a leading role. But they now, on last Sunday, you had the foreign ministers of Egypt, Turkey, Saudi Arabia, and Pakistan meet. The Iranians weren't there because the Iranian foreign minister was up in Switzerland meeting with J.D. Vance, indirectly. So, you got tremendous movement right now of creating this security architecture that we've talked about, to the point that it's becoming real. It's not just some far off flaky idea. There is actual movement forward on that.
Yeah, well, maybe we can talk more about this. What is the impact of that then on the rest of the region? You have even mainstream publications talking about the United States' even just its presence in the region as being completely and wholly unproductive. Here is Foreign Policy Magazine, full of neocons, but this particular author, who at the Cato Institute, which is full of neocons, Washington's Middle East military presence is uniquely counterproductive, citing that it's actually a relatively new concept over the last few decades for the U.S. to station as many troops and have as many bases as it does, and that none of this actually provided not only any security, but even meeting U.S. objectives and interests, not just so-called national security, but even the very notion that these bases are increasing and expanding U.S. influence and dominance in the region. So you have mainstream neocon light or straight up neocons talking like this. It seems like a pretty big shift, and indicates that they're aware that the security architecture could very well be real in the future.
Oh, security architecture is fundamentally changing. So first, like with the Saudis, they've told the United States in no uncertain terms, we're not doing a damn thing with the Abraham Accord until the Palestinians, Israel's out of Gaza, out of the West Bank, and the Palestinians have a state. Until then, don't waste your time with us. Qatar and the Saudis, according to our Pakistani source that Pepe and I have been in touch with, is saying that they've got assurances, or they have informed the Pakistanis that we're kicking the United States out. Qatar puts a 9 to 10 month window on it to close down Al Udeid Air Force Base and get the United States out of the region. So that's real. These various bases that were attacked and in large measure destroyed during the course of the war, they're not going to be rebuilt, and they're certainly not going to be restaffed with 1,000 of personnel. So you're really looking at here a significant change in the U.S. role in the Middle East, or West Asia, however you want to call it. the vision of China and Russia, in which the Arab, Turkish, Persian nationalities, who are all under a banner of Islam, come together to perform their own security function. That will further terrify Israel, because Israel can no longer use this divide and conquer strategy. They're going to face a united front that is, frankly, much more powerful militarily than Israel is. With the combined armies of Turkey, Egypt, and Iran, and Iran's superior ballistic missile capability, it's something that Israel is not prepared to confront. So yeah, this whole war of choice initiated by the Israelis and Donald Trump's acquiescence, it's blowing up on them. It's achieving the exact opposite outcomes that they anticipated.
And there will be few others other than the United States who will, and maybe Gulf countries that are under their vassalage, that will protest this. Abbas Araghchi has already said that they are pitching the institutional framework for a fee in the Strait of Hormuz to cover the services needed to manage it everywhere, including to China. And I don't see any protests coming from China, given how firm China has been on Iran's sovereignty and the sovereignty of all countries in the region and the world to be able to defend themselves if needed and to protect their interests if needed. It doesn't hinder China, and it doesn't hinder really international trade whatsoever, unless the United States tries to disrupt it, however foolhardy that may be.
Yeah, well, again, we get back to the question of what can the United States actually do to change the situation? What is its leverage? Right now, the United States has been forced to vacate several of the bases that have been staples in the past, and without the U.S. presence there, the prospects for further military action is extremely limited. And right now, orders have been drawn up to start the withdrawal of U.S. air and ground assets and naval assets from the region. To my knowledge, that order has not yet been signed. Once it's signed and these planes start moving out, I mean, there was a report yesterday, I haven't confirmed it independently, but that 28 KC-135s had departed Ben Gurion Airport. Now, why might that be? Well, that would be a first step. So you would take these aircraft, get them away from Ben Gurion, fly them to, say, the airbase in Cyprus, or fly them to an airbase in Italy, fly them to an airbase, Spain, Portugal, France, England, because they'll refuel, or up in Germany, and then as these F-35s try to fly home, they'll fly about 450 miles before they need to be refueled, so they can fly another 450 miles. And then the question becomes, how many hours is the pilot going to be allowed to fly before they have to have downtime? Since it's not a combat situation, they may put a pilot on an 8-hour limit, or a 12-hour limit. I'm not actually sure what that is, but so it'll take a while to start ferrying these aircraft back to the United States. Well, if they're in the process of moving back to the United States, they're not available for use in combat operations against Iran, which further reduces what Israel could count on or threaten to do.
Yeah, and a lot has been made of Greater Israel, Larry, but I see this moment as actually being a big crisis for this dream project of the Likud party and the rest of the fanatics inside of Israel, who want to see this kind of from the Euphrates to wherever, across the Mediterranean, this idea that they are going to expand in this way. It does not seem like that is doing anything. That concept is anywhere but in collapse. Your thoughts?
Well, they're the ones insisting from the river to the sea.
Yeah,
I mean, and Israel's just projecting. They don't want the Palestinians to claim that, and because that's an Israeli right, don't you know? It
Right.
says so in the Torah.
It's absolutely ridiculous. I mean, this is what always gets me. If Israel and the United States, but let's just say Israel right now, because Israel is the one vocally espousing the greater Israel dream. If they wanted it so badly, why don't they just do it? I mean, they've had to commit genocide in Gaza to what they say they control 70% of Gaza. I don't even know what that means, honestly, because that to me, that means very little if Israel can't actually establish a lot of colonial situations. You're a student of history, Larry. When you're a colonizer, you have to have administrative control. You have to administer an actual colonial government. You have to dictate. And I don't see that in Gaza. I don't see that. What does 70% of control mean? That you have troops running around waiting to get in? I don't understand it, but that's what they say. And then Hezbollah, they can't defeat Hezbollah. They got their butts kicked in so many battles, even just of late. I don't see this greater Israel dream as being successful. Like Syria, what are they, like, occupy desert area? Like, I just don't, they're not confronting anybody. Jolani is just Al-Qaeda. But once that project is collapsing, I don't see Syrians saying, okay, this is exactly what we want. I feel like it's a lot of borrowed time, but maybe that's my rosy outlook. What's your thoughts on the regional situation when it comes to greater Israel?
Yeah, well, I think greater Israel now dead. It's dying. It is not sustainable, and the growing sort of opposition to it, that it's running up against the limit, what I call the limits of Israel's military power. Israel does not have a large standing army; it's a reserve army, and even with the size of reserve army they have, they could effectively fight on one front. They can't fight multiple fronts, and that's exactly what they're trying to do, to engage both in Gaza, West Bank, Syria, and now Lebanon. And Lebanon in particular is particularly problematic for them, because Hezbollah, despite past attempts to weaken and defeat Hezbollah, it's failed. And Hezbollah's use of drones has proved out to be a very, very effective countermeasure to the Israeli attacks.
Maybe also to unlead with this question, what do you know about that giant explosion just a couple of days ago at Ras Laffan? What happened there? And is there you said earlier in the show that it's going to take at least a year, maybe two more years for Qatari gas to recover. Yeah. Does this hurt it even more, this catastrophic explosion? But what's your thought?
Well, I don't know specifically what blew up and what was damaged, so it would just be speculation. But it's not unreasonable to assume that was not viewed as a positive. And was it just an accident? Oh, maybe. And you could argue that it was an accident that was caused because of the structural instability of the system based on previous attacks, that may have helped precipitate and expand and make this worse. But it is just a reminder that even though if you get oil flowing out of the Persian Gulf, the fact that the Qataris aren't pumping out LNG, and with LNG comes helium, so those are two critical elements that are the world's going to be short of for some time. I'd say at least 6 months, if not a year.
And I'd be remiss not to cover what was absolutely horrific last night, the two earthquakes in Venezuela, magnitude of over 7. Now, the reported numbers, these are still early in terms of the impact, is devastating and tragic, but under the assumptions that were made by the U.S. Geological Survey, saying that it would run into tens of thousands, if not 100,000 plus. Right now, 188 dead, 1,500 injured in 2 7 magnitude earthquakes that occurred within 39 seconds of each other. The first thought I had is, one, Venezuela did build up quite impressive infrastructure. If they keep those numbers below what was assumed, then that means Venezuela has been very resilient under sanctions. But also the level of damage, if it continues to add up into these catastrophic numbers, the level of impact that sanctions do have, that are still technically, despite the Trump administration and Trump's, they're best friends of ours. We are so much, have this great relationship now. Those sanctions are not really lifted, especially those universal sanctions that go beyond oil. Your thoughts on
it hasn't really changed anything in terms of, it hasn't made the world more peaceful, more wealthy. This change, getting rid of Maduro is just taking away someone that Trump considered to be an obnoxious presence. And is it going to expose, will the court end up exposing potential corruption from U.S. actors? Yeah, I think so, possibly. By the way, I saw one of your commenters was asking, what kind of cigars do I smoke?
Yeah, so, what kind of cigars do you smoke?
Alec Bradley Superstition. It's a cigar made in Honduras.
Oh, okay. All right. Very cool. That's a whole other world to me. I've never smoked a cigar, but you always look like you're victorious when you're smoking one on the program.
I waited until I was 35 to develop the vice.
That's all right. That's all right. Well, in any event, Larry, any final thoughts on the current situation globally before we head out and I do some announcements?
Well, the biggest one is what's going to take place in Europe. We are headed towards there will be the war that's currently confined to Ukraine is going to expand beyond the borders. It will involve Europe and Germany, UK, France, Poland, Romania. They're like Latvia, Lithuania. They're likely to become engaged in this war, and they're going to suffer significant damage. The Russians are prepared for this. They've warned them, and those warnings have been ignored. So I think we're going to actually see the expansion of the war in Europe before we see it in Iran or the Persian Gulf.
Yeah, well, in Europe, especially their NATO leader, Rutte, they are bragging about being involved in all of the wars and how absolutely loyal they've been to these what have been losing causes. So no surprise there. But yeah, it is definitely going. The war in Ukraine is not over, and it's but it's not going in their favor. That's for sure. Which is why they need drone theatrics and optics to cover up that reality. But we are here. That's why we're here to uncover and lift the veil of this war propaganda. Everybody, thanks so much for joining today. I want to make sure and I don't know, I hope it's in there, but I'm gonna get it in there. Make sure that you follow Larry Johnson's blog at Sonar21. I am going to put it in there if it isn't in there. Nope, for some reason it wasn't, but now it is. So in the video description is sonar21.com. And transition protocol, right?
Yeah, I said also transition protocol. That's Pepe, the Pepe Larry show hosted by Zulfikar Ali.
I feel like he's been in touch with me. I should probably be in touch with him too. If he ever wants to coordinate anything. All right. That is also in the video description below. So do subscribe there, support that show. Hit the like button before you go. That helps boost the show on YouTube's algorithm. And underneath all of Larry's resources are where you can support this show, Patreon, Substack, and much more. All right, I'll be back tomorrow with our mutual friend, Patrick Henningsen. Same time, 2 p.m. Eastern time, June 26th. See you then.